Hey guys, Andrew here. This time finally with the long-awaited Worms deck profile. So Worms have actually become one of the most surprising decks in terms of how good it actually is. And given the low quality of cards, which is partially limited to being a mono-civ deck, it continues to do well in matchups we thought it had no chance in winning. In terms of a deck archetype, Worms is, in my opinion, a control deck, although a slightly weird one, which we will get into detail. So there are two things that the Darkness Civilization does best, and that's discard and destruction, both of which are key concepts of a control deck. So, firstly, for discard, we've got 2 copies of Ghost Touch, 2 copies of Lost Soul, and 4 copies of Locomotiver, which is, in my opinion, the best Darkness Shield trigger. And also Horrid Worm, which also discards, but we'll come to them later. For destruction, we've got 4 Death Smoke. Now, opinions on Death Smoke can be quite polarizing. In some situations, it's a 4-mana Terror Pit, and in other situations, it literally sits in your hand and does nothing. I'm personally more on the side of the card is amazing, because it really does help in getting rid of those early big hitters. And in a meta where people are kind of naturally afraid of breaking shields because of shield triggers, this card can be quite amazing. But we do want to know your guys' opinion on Death Smoke. Do you think it's as good as what I think? Or maybe you think it's utter garbage and doesn't deserve a spot in any deck? Anyway, let us know. Then we have the usual 4 Terror Pits, which is a staple in any Darkness deck. And now for our favorite card, Proclamation of Death, which says, short trigger, your opponent chooses one of its creatures in the battle zone and destroys it. Now you might be thinking, these guys have finally gone crazy. There's no way that this trash can be in the deck. Well, you guys are very wrong there. Well, I do agree that, Proclamation of Death on paper is not a good card by itself. However, with the theme of the deck being destruction, when you partner this card with other Darkness cards such as Death Smoke, Terror Pit, and Chaos Worm, which we'll talk about later, it really does surprise you. I often find this card to be really useful in destroying big evolution creatures. So give this card another try. You might be surprised. Finally, to wrap things up on the destruction spells, we've got 2 copies of Chains of Sacrifice. Don't get me wrong, this is also not an ideal card. For example, just compare this to Apocalypse Vice, and you can see the difference. However, this is a mono dark deck, and we aren't left with too many options. So that's it for destruction and discard. Next we have the Worms lineup. First of all, we've got 4 Horrid Worms. So Horrid Worm is great at drawing removal. When you say you drop this guy on turn 3, people really do their uttermost to try and remove him. Which you can't really blame them, because he is that scary if you leave him unchecked. We've also got 4 Gregorian Worms. He's a great shield trigger, and even if you do hard cast him for 4 mana, it's not too bad, as you do curve into Chaos Worm the turn after. Which does lead me to the key card of the deck, Chaos Wrom. So Chaos Wrom is the reason why this is even a deck to begin with. It itself is a great card with a decent sized body and a tremendously good effect. Essentially, think of a terror pit with a body. Next, we've also got 2 copies of Tyrant Worm. And this little guy is just in here to serve as evolution bait. You know, often the case you'll find you're stuck with Chaos Worms in your hand and, you know, they're essentially dead. And since this deck rarely gets past 7 or 8 mana, having 2 copies of these does allow you a bit more flexibility. You would never, say, play this card on turn 1 unless you're 100% sure your opponent is playing a, aggressive deck. We've also got 3 copies of Swamp Worm to finish off the Worms lineup. Now you might be thinking, alright, I guess Proclamation is not too bad. You know, it is a shield trigger, and it is also quite cheap. But now he's finally lost it. There's no way that Swamp Worm is a good card. Well, to that I say, just give him another go. Sometimes the synergies of a deck make some cards that are really bad on their own a lot better. So to round out our creatures, we also have 3 copies of Bloody Squito. And this is mainly to fend off early attackers, and also 3 copies of Shadow Moon. A great tech card which makes your Horrid Worms 4K. Who doesn't want more scary Horrid Worms? Additionally, the effect also stacks. So that's kind of it for Worms. Sorry again that this did take so long, but hopefully it was worth the wait, and you kind of understand why this deck has easily become one of our favorite decks to play. This is Andrew, and you're watching The Gauntlet.